Hello, my friend. It's time for sleep. For more bedtime stories, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and comment if you enjoyed it. Now get cozy, close your eyes, and let's begin our story. The first sensation is always the same: dampness. The smell of stale wine clings to the straw mattress, mixed with the sourness of sweat that no perfume can truly hide. Somewhere above, Rome is stirring, but here in the cellar, time feels slow and heavy. You open your eyes to darkness. Not the darkness of night, but the darkness of a room too small for air to move, too narrow for comfort. The walls seem closer each morning, their rough surface cold to the touch. There is no window, no breeze, only a crooked wooden door that promises no real privacy. This is your home. This is your work. The space is no larger than your outstretched arms. A heap of straw serves as a bed, its smell forever tainted by smoke, wine, and disappointment. A tiny oil lamp sits by your side if it hasn't been stolen in the night. Your possessions are pitiful: a cracked bronze mirror, a wooden comb with missing teeth, and a small jar of rouge that pretends to bring life back into your tired face. Beyond your door, the brothel is already awake. You hear muffled voices, a cough from the woman next door, the soft shuffle of bare feet across stone, the sharp tone of the brothel keeper scolding someone for poor earnings. Above you, faint laughter and clattering amphory signal that the tavern has opened for the day. There is no time to linger. You rise slowly, pulling the thin fabric of your toga into place. The hallway is narrow, lined with cubicles like yours. Curtains sway faintly in the stale air. No one talks much in the morning, no one wants to look too closely at one another. Bathing is always a negotiation. You don't have the luxury of a private basin. That belongs to the wealthy matrons who live in villas surrounded by marble columns. For you, washing is a public act. You make your way to the nearest fountain, hoping it hasn't been used by the butcher or for rinsing fish. You splash water on your face, wipe it away with a strip of linen, and breathe in the city's mixed smells: bread baking, sewage flowing, the sharp tang of early morning wine. If you have enough coins from last night, you might visit the public baths later. But the baths bring their own discomfort. You will undress before strangers, merchants, soldiers, even philosophers, and sit in the steam room while your body is scraped with a strigil, a curved blade meant to clean the skin. You will feel cleaner afterward, but never free of the eyes that linger too long. Afterward, you will dab chalk powder on your face, rouge on your cheeks, and kohl around your eyes. You don't do it for beauty. You do it to hide the fatigue that always creeps into your expression. Your toga is short and brightly colored, loud enough to attract attention yet cheap enough to mark you for what you are. Respectable women wear the stola, long and layered, a symbol of their husband's control. The law forbids you from wearing it. You are set apart without needing to say a word. You fasten earrings of dull bronze, pull on worn sandals, and adjust the blonde wig you bought from a Gaulish trader. In the cracked mirror you try a smile. Feels like a lie. You step into the city's roar. Rome is already alive. You know where to go: near the taverns, by the entrance to the baths, at the busy marketplace. Visibility is survival. There is nothing subtle about your work. You call to passers-by with practiced charm, sometimes with soft flattery, sometimes with desperate laughter. The competition is always close. Women standing only a few steps away, ready to drop their prices or promise more than you ever would. A sailor staggers past, already drunk despite the hour. A senator in fine sandals glances away, pretending not to see you though you know he will return later, when the sun sets and shame fades. A young boy pauses, unsure, then hurries off like a startled bird. Your name might be remembered from the graffiti scratched onto the walls of the Lupanar. Crude messages left by clients serve as your only advertisement. Felicia, worth 2 coins. Quick but kind. Livia, soft as Venus herself. Even the walls tell stories about you. But you straighten your back and keep walking. Rent is due. The brothel keeper will take his share. Tomorrow the tax collector will come for his. Rome does not forgive women who cannot pay. Sometimes, in quiet moments between customers, a dangerous thought creeps into your mind. What if there was another life? What if the gods sent you a patron who kept his promises? What if one day you could simply leave? But you shake the thought away. You cannot afford hope. Survival is the only goal. You pick up your small pouch of perfumes and rouge. The streets are filling fast with noise, carts rattling, merchants shouting, the endless flow of people. It is time to smile again, time to become what they want you to be. You step back into the sun, a living advertisement in a city that feeds on desire and judgment in equal measure. The streets of Rome are never quiet. From the moment the sun rises, the city hums with restless energy. Vendors shout over one another in the forum, hawking bread, olives and fish. Carts rattle across uneven stones, pulled by tired mules. Priests chant in temples while gamblers curse their luck in taverns. And you, like many others, weave through this noise, a part of the city's living machinery. The day belongs to those who can be seen. For you, being invisible is death. You position yourself carefully near the baths, where the air is heavy with steam and the scent of bodies scrubbed half clean. Patrons exiting the baths are your best chance. They are relaxed, flushed, and still lingering in that soft haze between cleansing and indulgence. You stand where the sunlight catches your brightly dyed toga. You tilt your head just enough to catch someone's eye without seeming desperate. You speak softly to a merchant as he passes, offering a compliment about his sandals, his hair, even his posture. It doesn't matter if it's true. A few kind words can loosen a coin purse better than a shout. Some men stop to speak, drawn in by your practiced charm. Others look away quickly, pretending they didn't hear. You recognize the signs now, the ones who will haggle for hours over a single coin, the ones who will promise more than they ever intend to pay, the ones who are dangerous no matter what you say. Above you, on the steps of a temple, a group of matrons walks past. They glance at you with cold eyes, their faces carved with the disdain of people who live behind walls. They are wrapped in layers of stola, each layer a statement of their husband's wealth and power. You are not allowed their clothing, their status, or their safety. You exist as the opposite of their world. Yet their husbands will find you later. You catch the eye of a man leaving the baths. He looks like a soldier, his hair cropped short, his hands calloused. He hesitates, then approaches. You exchange the usual words: a price, a promise, a place. Sometimes it is over quickly. Sometimes it feels like it will never end. Either way, it is necessary. A day without customers is a day without food. When it's done, you wash quickly at a fountain, wiping away what you can. There is no luxury of clean towels or scented oils. You rinse your mouth with watered wine and reapply the powder to your cheeks. You are already preparing for the next one. In the distance, laughter echoes from the tavern. You know that sound well. By afternoon, the tavern will be full and the work will shift. Inside, the air is heavy with the smell of cheap wine, roasted fish, and sweat. Men play dice, argue about politics they don't understand, and shout half-remembered verses from poets they can't afford to read. Working the tavern is different. There you must serve wine, laugh at jokes that are barely jokes, and dodge the groping hands of men too drunk to remember your name. Some will offer coins for more than wine, and you will take them to the back room if the price is worth the risk. The tavern has no walls for privacy, just thin curtains and shadows that hide nothing. You've learned to move quickly. Pour a drink, smile at the one with the loudest laugh, whisper a word that sounds like invitation. You are part performer, part server, part bargaining piece. Even in this there are dangers. Fights break out easily in taverns. A wrong look, a spilled drink, a lost bet. Suddenly the room becomes chaos. When that happens, you step back into the corner and wait for the bouncer, usually a retired gladiator with more scars than patience, to throw someone into the street. Sometimes you leave the tavern and wander to the forum. There, graffiti catches your eye. It's everywhere, scratched into walls, carved into pillars, smeared across doorways. Some of it is cruel, some crude, some almost sweet. A client has written your name in sloppy letters, followed by a clumsy compliment. Another has written something unkind. The walls remember everything. As the sun begins to sink, the streets grow louder. Musicians play in the corners, children shout and chase each other, and drunk men stumble into the alleys. Nighttime brings its own rhythm. You know that when darkness falls, the city changes. There will be more soldiers, more sailors, more men returning from the baths or the temples looking for someone like you. The competition becomes sharper. Women you know will lower their prices. Some will take risks you won't. And still you stay because there is nowhere else to go. You adjust your toga again, straighten your shoulders, and prepare for the rest of the day. There is no room for rest, no pause for doubt. Rome doesn't wait. It keeps moving, and so must you. Survival is not about hope. It is about enduring one more day, one more client, one more night in the cellar. Tomorrow will be the same. And the day after that. When the sun slips behind the rooftops of Rome, the city doesn't sleep. It shifts. The noise of daytime merchants fades into the rougher voices of tavern keepers, gamblers, and men who have had too much wine. The air grows cooler but heavier, carrying the smell of oil lamps, smoke, and the sweetness of spilled honey drinks. You know this is when the real work begins. Nighttime brings a different kind of customer. During the day, it's merchants and bathhouse regulars. At night, it's soldiers with coins from their latest campaign, sailors who haven't seen a woman in months, senators who sneak away from their polished villas pretending they are above desire. And then there are the dangerous ones. Men with nothing to lose, men who drink too much, men who mistake your profession for weakness. You light a small oil lamp in your cubicle, its dim glow softening the cracks in the wall. A curtain separates your tiny space from the hallway, but it does little to muffle the sounds. Voices overlap. Laughter, moans, arguments over prices. Somewhere a woman is crying quietly. Somewhere else someone is laughing too loudly to care. The brothel is never quiet at night. The Leno, the brothel keeper, walks the corridor with his heavy steps, making sure everyone is working. He is a man who sees you as coin, not flesh. He yells if you take too long with a client. He collects his share before you even touch the coins. If you owe him, he will remind you. If you fall behind, there will be no mercy. When the customers arrive, they choose quickly. They don't see you as a person, only as a shape, a momentary escape. Some are gentle, some are rough, some are forgettable, and some will haunt you for weeks. Tonight, a senator comes in, pretending to be someone else. You recognize him. He was on the temple steps this morning with his wife. He doesn't recognize you, or maybe he does, but it doesn't matter. He speaks softly, as if secrecy makes him less guilty. You say nothing. You have learned to keep secrets. Secrets are worth more than honesty in Rome. When he leaves, another man comes. Then another. Sometimes you don't remember their faces. Sometimes you don't want to. There are moments when you work outside the brothel at night, wandering near the taverns or the alleys. The streets are crowded but dangerous after dark. Thieves lurk in the shadows. Vigiles, the city guards, patrol slowly, but they are not there to protect women like you. If they catch you without proper registration, they can fine you, harass you, or worse. You see graffiti on the walls again, this time illuminated by flickering torchlight. Names of women like you scratched into stone, followed by crude drawings or messages. Some women pay to have their names carved near tavern doors. Others rely on their clients to spread their reputation. In Rome, even your worth is written in public. The tavern itself is alive with chaos. Dice clatter across wooden tables, cups of wine spill, someone strums a lyre badly while singing even worse. You walk between tables, pouring watered-down wine, laughing when expected, brushing your hand lightly over a man's shoulder to make him think he's special. For a few extra coins, you'll lead him upstairs to a small, dark room. But in the tavern, things can turn dangerous quickly. A drunken argument becomes a fight. A soldier pulls a knife. Someone loses a bet and decides to take it out on the nearest person. You've seen women caught in the middle, hurt just for being there. That's why you move carefully, always watching, always ready to slip away into the shadows if trouble starts. There is also the fear of disease. You don't have words for it the way a healer would, but you know it exists. Some men leave you with more than just coins. You feel the symptoms days later: pain, fever, itching, strange sores. There are herbs and powders at the market that promise cures, but most are lies. You pray to Venus or Fortuna for protection, but the gods do not always listen. Sometimes you go to the public baths at night. They're quieter then, filled with lingering steam and faint candlelight. You scrape your skin with a strigil, washing away the day's grime, trying to feel clean again even if it lasts only a few moments. You sit in the tepidarium, the warm room, and let the heat numb your mind. Around you are other women like you, doing the same, silent, tired, pretending this is enough. When you return to the brothel, the air feels heavier. More clients have come. The hallway is alive with muffled sounds behind the curtains. You try to rest between visits, but there is little time. The Leno knocks, reminding you that there's another man waiting. Eventually the night slows. The drunkest men collapse in the tavern or stumble back to their homes. The brothel grows quiet, except for the occasional sigh or cough. You lie down on the straw mattress, exhausted, smelling of wine and sweat. You close your eyes, knowing tomorrow will be the same. There is no promise of change, only survival. In the distance, the city hums even at this hour. Rome never sleeps. It only waits for the next day to begin again. Morning comes too soon, and with it, the reminder that nothing in Rome is free. Not the room you sleep in, not the thin meal you eat, not even your right to work. Everything has a price. Before the day fully begins, the tax collector will come. He always does. He is not loud or threatening. He doesn't need to be. His presence is enough to make the room feel smaller, the air feel colder. He carries a wax tablet, scratching down names and numbers with the precision of someone who knows that fear makes people obedient. You are reminded, again, that in Rome even your body is a commodity regulated by the state. The tax is called the vectigal ex capturis, a fee imposed on prostitutes, collected regularly, as if your work were no different than a merchant selling olives or a potter shaping clay. You must be registered with the authorities, your name written down in an official list. Some women are branded or tattooed, especially if they are enslaved. A mark that says what you are. A mark that ensures you cannot pretend to be respectable later. That mark follows you even when you try to walk among people who claim to be better than you. When the collector finishes, he leaves without a word, moving on to the next woman. He doesn't care if you made money last night or not. The tax is due whether you earned it or borrowed it. If you cannot pay, the Leno will remind you of your debt. And the Leno is never as calm as the tax collector. After the collector, the brothel keeper comes. He takes his share without asking. You never see how much he truly collects from all of you, but you know it is enough to keep him fed and clothed in better quality than any of the women he manages. If you work the streets instead of a brothel, you keep more, but you also risk more. The vigilas can arrest you if you aren't registered or if you cause public disorder, a phrase that means whatever they want it to mean that day. This is the first cost. Money. The second cost is health. There is no true medicine for your work. You have herbs, powders, and the advice of older women who have learned through bitter experience. You've heard of diseases that rot the flesh, fevers that don't go away, pains that no prayer can heal. Rome does not understand germs, but it understands shame. When a man falls ill, he blames the woman. When you fall ill, there is no one to blame. Some women use sponges soaked in wine or vinegar as crude protection. Others rely on plants like silphium, though it is rare and expensive now. There are woolen tampons dipped in herbal mixtures, charms whispered to Venus for luck. None of it is certain. Sometimes the gods answer. Sometimes they do not. Pregnancy is another shadow hanging over you. If it comes, your choices are limited. You might carry the child, raising it in the same room you work in. You might give it to a foundling home, hoping a kind family takes it in. Or you might do what many do, leave it quietly in a place where it won't be found alive. No one speaks of this, but everyone knows it happens. And then there is the third cost. The one no one sees. It is the weight of the stares from people who act as if you are less than human. The priests who preach about moral decay, even as they slip coins into your hand at night. The matrons who clutch their stola tighter when they pass you, even as their husbands visit you in secret. The writers who mock you in their verses but describe your life in suspiciously vivid detail. You are tolerated but not respected. Legal but not accepted. Rome feeds on your work while pretending it doesn't exist. Sometimes the judgment is open. A senator's wife petitions for laws to keep women like you out of the public baths. A philosopher writes a speech about the decline of Roman virtue. A group of matrons whisper loudly when you pass. But more often it is silent. A glance. A step back. A curled lip. Still you endure. Because survival is its own quiet rebellion. There are women older than you who have survived longer. They tell you to save what little you can. Maybe one day you'll have enough to buy your freedom if you're enslaved. Maybe one day you'll stop working and open a small tavern or bathhouse. Maybe one day someone will keep a promise and take you away from the cellar. But most of them never leave. They work until their beauty fades and then they find other ways to earn, becoming madams, herbalists, or simply fading into the streets. You know the cycle well. You are part of it already. At night, when you return to your straw mattress, you stare at the ceiling and think about how strange it is that you still dream. Dreams of a life where your name isn't scratched into the wall of a brothel. Dreams of waking up somewhere with a window. Dreams of someone looking at you without calculation. But when morning comes, you push the dreams aside. There is rent to pay, taxes to meet, the streets waiting for you again. And so the cycle continues. In a place where survival is always uncertain, trust is rare. Yet among the women who share the same walls, the same hallway, and the same silence after clients leave, there is a kind of unspoken understanding. You learn quickly who can be trusted and who cannot. Some women are kind, sharing what little they have. A scrap of bread, a drop of perfume, a whispered warning about a dangerous client. Others are desperate enough to betray anyone for a few extra coins. In the brothel, alliances shift like the Roman streets after rain, fast, slippery, and never fully safe. Still bonds form. Small ones. Quiet ones. Sometimes, late at night when the tavern noise fades and the brothel finally grows still, you sit in the dim hallway with another woman, speaking in low voices. You talk about nothing and everything. About the clients who made you laugh, the ones who frightened you, the ones who left you feeling hollow. About the families you no longer see, or the dreams you don't admit during the day. You do not speak too openly. Rome has ears everywhere. Even among yourselves, you know secrets can be sold. But there is comfort in those small moments. A shared laugh over a ridiculous senator who wept like a child. A comforting touch on the shoulder when someone comes back from a client pale and shaken. A piece of bread slipped into your hand when you couldn't afford a meal. These are the things that keep you from feeling completely alone. Older women become quiet guides. They have survived longer than most, and their eyes carry the knowledge of too many years. They teach you tricks: how to spot a man who won't pay, how to bargain without looking desperate, how to mix a cheap perfume that hides more than it reveals. They know which soldiers are dangerous, which taverns are safe, and which streets to avoid after dark. Sometimes they tell you stories. Stories of women who escaped the life, who married patrons, who opened their own bathhouses or taverns. You know most of these stories are only half true, told more for hope than history. But you listen anyway. Hope, even if it is a lie, is better than silence. There are also the small rituals. Before a night's work, some women leave a coin at the tiny altar to Venus in the corner of the brothel. Others wear charms tied with red string to ward off bad luck. You have your own ritual too, a quick prayer whispered under your breath, not sure if the gods listen but saying it anyway. In rare moments of peace, you all gather in the baths together. You scrub each other's backs with rough cloths, scrape away the sweat and dust with strigils, and sit in the warm water talking softly. For a brief time, you are just women again, not commodities. The bathwater is shared, the awkward glance is ignored. For a brief time you feel clean even if you know it won't last. The brothel keeper doesn't like these small gatherings. He prefers when the women stay apart, divided. But he cannot stop them entirely. Even in a place designed to strip you of dignity, you find ways to hold on to pieces of yourself. There are also moments of quiet rebellion. A client who pays poorly and thinks himself clever finds his sandals missing when he leaves. A Leno who cheats on the rent finds his wine diluted with water. A senator's wife who speaks too loudly about fallen women finds her husband's name scratched on the wall of the lupanar for everyone to see. These small acts don't change the world, but they make the weight easier to carry. Despite everything, laughter still exists. Not the loud, forced laughter of taverns, but soft, genuine laughter that slips out when someone tells a ridiculous story about a client who fell asleep before he finished, or the time a soldier brought a goat as payment. These moments are rare, but they are real. You learn to hold on to them. For all the cruelty, there is still humanity here. In the shared meals, in the whispered warnings, in the quiet prayers. Even in the darkest corners of Rome, you are not entirely alone. And so you continue. Together, but always aware that tomorrow could scatter these fragile alliances like dust. The city outside remains loud and unfeeling. But within these walls, in these moments, there is something that feels almost like family. A family born not of blood but of survival. And in Rome, survival is the only bond that truly matters. Even in a city of stone and empire, the unseen world is never far away. Rome is full of gods, too many to count. Every street corner has a shrine, every household a small altar. People pray to Mercury for luck, to Mars for strength, to Fortuna for the turn of fate. And in your line of work you cannot ignore them. The women in the brothel have their own rituals, passed down quietly from one to another. Some are Roman, some foreign, some little more than superstition. But all of them are tied to one hope: protection. Protection from bad clients, from disease, from poverty, from the endless cycle that swallows so many. At the entrance of the brothel, there is a crude little altar dedicated to Venus. The statue is chipped, the offering simple: wilted flowers, a splash of cheap perfume, a copper coin or two. Before starting a night's work, many of the women stop there, whispering short prayers. Some pray for generous clients. Some pray for quick ones. Some pray simply to survive the night. You too have your own words for the goddess. They are not elaborate, just a small promise spoken under your breath. Let me come back safe. Let the men be kind. Let tomorrow not be worse than today. But Venus is not the only one you call upon. Fortuna, the goddess of luck, is just as important. You've seen women wear charms of her image around their necks, hidden beneath their togas. Others tie thin red threads around their wrists or ankles to ward off the evil eye. A few even visit witches, paying for charms or spells that promise to draw better clients or curse a rival's luck. There are curse tablets hidden beneath the stones of the brothel, written in sharp Latin letters by someone with too much anger to contain. They say things like, "May her tongue rot. May her clients forget her name. May she trip in the street and fall into filth." These curses are as much a part of the trade as perfume and rouge. You have seen them before, thin sheets of lead rolled up and nailed to the walls of the baths or buried near temples. Some are written by jealous women. Some are written by men who feel cheated. The gods, it seems, are as busy as the streets of Rome. When times are bad, some of the women visit the temple of Mercury, the god of trade. After all, your life is one long transaction. Mercury is supposed to bless merchants and travelers, but many believe he has a soft spot for those who live by their wits. A coin left on his altar might mean a night with better customers. And then there is the temple of Asclepius, the god of healing. You've been there once, lying on the cold floor among the sick, hoping for a dream that would tell you how to cure the fever you caught from a client. The priest said the god sometimes speaks through dreams, but when you woke there was no answer, just the same hollow ache in your body. Religion in Rome is everywhere, but it doesn't always give comfort. It reminds you that you are small, that your prayers compete with thousands of others, that the gods may listen but they rarely speak back. Still you pray, because doing nothing feels worse. Sometimes you join the other women in small rituals, burning a bit of incense before a night's work, washing your hands in water mixed with herbs believed to bring luck, rubbing a bit of oil on your forehead while murmuring words you don't fully understand. It may all be meaningless, but it feels like armor, thin as it is. When you're outside, working the streets, you sometimes linger near the temple steps. Men are drawn to temptation even in sacred places, and you've learned that the shadow of a goddess's statue can be as profitable as a tavern doorway. People come to pray for victory, for love, for forgiveness. Some leave the temple and come straight to you. You do not feel guilty about this. Rome's gods are used to contradictions. Sometimes you wonder if any of these divine figures truly care. Does Venus watch? Does Fortuna smile? Or do they sit high above, amused at the struggles of mortals like you? Still, on the nights when fear weighs heavy, you whisper a prayer anyway. Because even if the gods are silent, the act of asking feels like a small rebellion against despair. And in this city, where judgment and survival are constant companions, even a small rebellion is something worth holding on to. Tomorrow you will light the lamp at Venus's altar again. Tomorrow you will tie the red thread again. Tomorrow you will walk the same streets, pass the same temples and leave the same offerings. Because in Rome the gods may not save you, but forgetting them feels like inviting disaster. In your work, men come and go like the tides of the Tiber River, sometimes gentle, sometimes raging, sometimes leaving wreckage behind. Most are forgettable. A blur of faces, voices, and smells that fade the moment they step out the door. But now and then, one lingers in your mind for reasons you can't always explain. Clients are not all the same. Some arrive nervous, eyes darting, voices soft with hesitation. Others swagger in as if they own the world, full of cheap confidence. A few are cruel, eager to remind you of your place. And then there are the ones who confuse you, kind, or at least pretending well enough that you almost believe it. Men often speak to you as if you are invisible and the only one who sees them at the same time. They confess secrets after a cup of wine or two, whispering things they would never tell their wives or friends. They speak of their ambitions, their fears, their loneliness. They want you to listen. They want to believe you care. You've learned how to nod, how to smile at the right moments, how to ask small questions that make them feel special. It isn't love. It isn't even friendship. It's part of the work. But sometimes it almost feels real. There was a merchant who visited you every time he returned from his travels. He always brought a little gift, cheap jewelry, a ribbon for your hair, once even a comb from Alexandria carved with tiny lotus flowers. He never stayed long, but he always called you by name as if you were more than a passing distraction. You caught yourself thinking of him when he wasn't there, wondering when he'd return. There was a soldier too who came after the baths, still smelling faintly of oil and sweat. He didn't talk much, but he always placed the coins down without haggling, without rushing. He told you once, very quietly, that he wished he had met you before the army, before he became who he was now. Then he kissed your forehead and left, never to return. But for every man like that, there are others who remind you why you can never truly trust. A senator who promised you a villa and a better life, only to disappear after a month. A sailor who left you sick and unpaid. A young boy who cried in your arms and then, the next week, bragged about you loudly in a tavern, turning you into a story for his friends. You have seen women fall into the trap of believing a client's words. Some even give up other work for one man, only to be left behind when he grows tired of them. You've watched women lose everything chasing an idea that never truly existed. You tell yourself you won't be one of them. But you also know the heart is a strange thing. It doesn't always listen to reason. Among the women in the brothel, there are whispered stories of real affection. A man who freed his favorite and married her. A freed woman who opened a perfume shop with her lover's help. These stories are rare, but they exist. They are told in hushed voices during late nights, half as warning, half as hope. Sometimes you wonder if love is even possible for someone like you. The law says you cannot marry a Roman citizen. Society says you are not worthy of affection, only transaction. But in the quiet moments, lying on your straw mattress, You imagine what it would feel like to be seen without calculation. To be wanted not for a coin but for yourself. It's a dangerous thought. You push it away when the brothel keeper knocks on your door. Because at the end of the day you know the truth. Affection is fleeting. Deception is constant. And survival does not wait for dreams. Yet even with all you've seen you cannot fully harden your heart. Sometimes when a man looks at you with tired eyes and speaks gently, you feel something stir. A small reminder that beneath all the masks, all the layers of necessity, you are still human. And maybe, just maybe, so are they. But the moment always passes. The curtain closes. The coins change hands. And the world goes back to what it was. You tell yourself it's better this way. Because in Rome, love is not a promise. It is just another transaction waiting to break. In Rome, beauty is more than an ornament. It is a currency. And like all currency, it loses value with time. When you are young, men notice you more. They linger, they pay a little extra, they speak softer words. But in this city of a million faces, there is always someone younger, someone newer, someone willing to work for less. Rome is a place that forgets quickly. You have seen it happen to the older women around you. Their skin no longer smooth, their voices rough from years of smoke and shouting over tavern noise. Their hair thins, their eyes dull with exhaustion. The men who once sought them out pass by without a glance now. And when the clients stop coming, survival becomes even harder. But they are not gone. They adapt. Some become madams, the Lena, women who run brothels and manage others. They no longer work themselves but live from the earnings of the younger ones. They are sharp, cunning, and unyielding. They know every trick, every danger, every secret of the trade. Some are cruel, some are strangely protective, but all are survivors. Others move into the taverns where work is easier but still meager. They serve wine, clean tables, and flirt enough to earn tips without stepping into the back rooms. A few turn to fortune-telling, reading omens in dice, or offering love charms made from herbs. Some even pretend to be healers, selling cheap salves and remedies. And then there are those who simply fade into the streets. They beg outside temples, wash laundry for the wealthy, or sweep the floors of bathhouses. They survive quietly, unnoticed, until the city swallows them entirely. You have heard of a few who were lucky. Women who saved enough coins to open a small bathhouse or a shop selling perfumes and oils. Women who caught the attention of a client who truly kept his promise and offered them a new life. But these stories are rare, so rare they feel more like myths than reality. Sometimes the older women tell you this as a warning. Save your coins, they say. Don't trust the men. Don't waste your youth on false promises. You nod, but you know how difficult it is to save anything when every day brings new cost. There is also the unspoken fear of illness. The body cannot endure forever. A fever can take you out of work for weeks. A wound that festers means no income at all. Some women disappear suddenly, their absence explained only by a quiet rumor. She was too sick and no one could help her. In a city like Rome, the ill are forgotten quickly. When you look at the older women, you see both a warning and a strange kind of strength. They have endured what you are enduring now. They are living proof that it is possible to survive, even if survival comes with scars you cannot see. You catch yourself sometimes staring at your reflection in the bronze mirror, wondering how long your own youth will last. How many years before the men's eyes slide past you to someone else? How many years before you too must find another way? It is not a thought you like to dwell on, but it lingers in the back of your mind. Time is always moving in Rome and it does not wait for anyone. Some nights, lying on your straw mattress, you imagine a future where you are no longer here. A future where you are someone's wife or the owner of a small shop, or simply a woman who wakes up without fear. You imagine sitting in the sun without worrying who will see you. But the morning always comes and with it the same walls, the same hallway, the same debts. Still, you tell yourself there is time. A little more time. A few more years to earn, to plan, to maybe escape. You hold on to that thought because it is the only one that makes the weight of tomorrow feel lighter. For now you are still young enough. For now men still look. For now the city still wants you. But you know the day will come when that changes. And when it does, you will have to decide whether you will adapt, or be forgotten. Your body is your livelihood, but in Rome, it is also your greatest vulnerability. Every day it is used, touched, and exhausted. And every day it carries the risk of something worse, disease, injury, or the slow decay of neglect. The city is full of illnesses that have no names. Fevers that burn for weeks, rashes that spread like fire, pains that won't go away. You hear whispers of women who woke one morning with sores that never healed, of men who carried invisible sicknesses and left them behind like unwanted gifts. No one fully understands why. Rome does not have the words for germs or infection, only vague ideas of bad humors, or cursed blood. You've seen it? A woman in the brothel with skin pale and damp, coughing into her hands until she can't work anymore. Another whose legs were covered in angry red sores. A man who came in laughing one week and was carried out silent the next. There are no real doctors for people like you. Physicians serve the wealthy, and even their knowledge is limited. For women in your trade, medicine is whatever you can find. Sometimes you visit the market for herbs. Yarrow for bleeding. Angelica for fevers. Juniper berries boiled in wine to cleanse the body. You've used wool sponges soaked in vinegar or honey as a crude barrier, hoping it might prevent something worse. Some women carry silphium, a plant so rare and costly it's said to be worth its weight in silver. But it's almost gone now, harvested to extinction by women who needed it more than the empire cared to save it. There are remedies passed down quietly from one woman to another. Garlic mashed into paste and mixed with oil to fight infection. Birch bark boiled into a tar-like salve for burns. Mugwort tea for calming pain even if it only helps you sleep through it. Meadow herbs for cramps, for headaches, for the lingering aches you don't speak of. And then there are the darker cures. Potions to end a pregnancy, whispered about but never openly named. Mixtures of bitter herbs, strong wine, and prayers said in fear. They work sometimes. Other times they do not. And when they don't, the woman is left weaker, closer to the edge. If you cannot heal, you go to the temple of Asclepius, the god of medicine. You lie on the cold floor among the sick, hoping the god will send you a dream with an answer. The priests say the dreams are sacred. Sometimes you wake with a vision. More often you wake with nothing but the same pain you brought in. Superstition is medicine too. You've seen women tie charms around their wrists, carry amulets shaped like phalluses for protection, or burn incense to drive out what they call the evil eye. Some hire witches to curse rivals or bless their health. You don't know if it works, but it feels better to believe something might. And when all else fails, there is wine. Always wine. To numb the pain. To quiet the fear. To make the nights pass faster. Too much wine can dull your senses, but sometimes that's the only way to keep going. There is no escaping the toll. You see it in the older women, joints stiff with pain, lungs heavy with coughs, faces marked by years of strain. You see it in yourself too, even if you don't want to admit it. The work leaves its scars. Physical and unseen. But you cannot stop. You cannot rest. A day without clients is a day without coins. And a day without coins is a day closer to hunger, to debt, to the streets. So you take the herbs. You tie the charms. You whisper the prayers. You scrape your skin in the baths and hope the dirt you remove is the worst of it. And then you go back to work. Because there is no other choice. The body is fragile, but survival demands it keep going. And in Rome, survival is the only medicine that truly matters. In Rome, you are legal but never respectable. You exist in a strange space the law tolerates but society despises. Every day you are reminded of this contradiction. The senators speak in the forum about morality, proclaiming that Rome must remain pure and virtuous. They pass laws that forbid you from wearing the stola, the dignified dress of respectable women. They say your bright toga is a warning to all, that you are not a wife, not a mother, not a citizen deserving honor. Yet those same senators come to you at night. They slip into brothels under the cover of darkness, paying for what they publicly condemn. They write speeches against vice in the morning and scratch their names into the Lupanar walls by evening. The priests are no different. They bless the temples, preach of sacred duty, and still whisper your name when no one is listening. They claim your work offends the gods, yet offer prayers in Venus's temple before seeking your company. And the matrons, those wives wrapped in layers of fine linen, faces stiff with pride, they look at you as if you are a disease. They walk past you with sharp eyes and tighter lips. But you know their husbands visit the same brothels you do. You have seen them. Sometimes you even know their secrets better than they do. Writers mock you in poems and satires, calling you greedy, lazy, or corrupt. They paint you as a symbol of Rome's moral decline. Juvenal writes of women like you with scorn. Seneca condemns the decay of virtue. But their words betray curiosity. They describe your world too vividly, too knowingly. It's as if they are both disgusted and fascinated, unable to look away. Even the law reminds you of your status. You are required to register with the aediles, Roman officials who maintain the city's moral order. They keep lists of women like you, ensuring you can never erase what you are. You cannot marry a freeborn Roman man. You cannot inherit property like a citizen. You are marked, legally and socially, as infamous, a person without honor. Yet Rome cannot survive without you. The same city that scorns you depends on you to keep its desires hidden. Men seek you out to avoid scandal. Husbands pay you so they do not trouble their wives. Young boys come to you before marriage to learn what their future brides should never know. Even slaves and freedmen visit, saving coins for weeks just to have an hour of escape. You are Rome's contradiction made flesh. The hypocrisy is exhausting. Sometimes you want to scream at the matrons who glare at you, to tell them you know their husbands' voices in the dark. You want to laugh in the faces of senators who talk about virtue while leaving coins on your table. But you stay silent because silence keeps you alive. The city judges you, but it cannot erase you. Your presence is carved into its walls, scribbled in its graffiti, whispered in its streets. You are as much a part of Rome as the temples, the baths, the markets. They may pretend otherwise, but they cannot remove you from their world. At night, when the city quiets and the judgment fades to a dull memory, you sometimes feel the weight of it pressing down on you. You lie awake on your straw mattress and wonder if the gods care about such things. Venus never judged you. Fortuna doesn't choose sides. Maybe the gods understand better than mortals do, that desire and shame are inseparable, that people will always pretend to be better than they are. So you endure. Because in the end, Rome's judgment is like everything else here. Loud, heavy, and ultimately hollow. And tomorrow they will still come knocking at your door. Even in the narrowest life, there are moments that feel almost free. They do not last long, but they are enough to remind you that you are still alive, still capable of feeling something beyond survival. Sometimes the escape is simple, a day when business is slow and the brothel keeper is too distracted to notice. You slip out into the streets, blending with the crowd like any other woman. You walk through the market not to work but just to wander. You let yourself pause at a stall of fresh figs, their sweetness perfuming the air. You watch children chase each other around a fountain, laughing without care. For a little while, you are not what the city calls you. You are just a person moving through the sunlight. There are other small joys. Sharing a loaf of bread with another woman in the brothel, sitting quietly as the evening breeze drifts through the doorway. Watching a street performer juggling torches in the forum, his face painted white, making the crowd roar with laughter. Listening to a lyre player sing a soft melody in the distance, the notes carrying you somewhere far beyond these walls. On some days you visit the baths not to cleanse, but simply to soak in the warm water until your muscles stop aching. You close your eyes and pretend you are somewhere else, by the sea maybe, where the waves wash everything clean. You imagine the steam carrying away the smell of wine and sweat that clings to your skin, even if it will return by nightfall. Sometimes you allow yourself small acts of rebellion. Sneaking an extra sip of wine from the tavern's jug when no one is looking. Telling a client a lie so convincing it almost feels like a story you want to believe yourself. Or leaving a piece of graffiti on the wall, a name, a message, a tiny mark that says, "I was here and I mattered." There are also rare moments when the women gather after the brothel grows quiet. Someone finds a bit of music, someone brings a cheap jug of wine, and for an hour you laugh together. Not because there's a reason, but because laughter itself feels like defiance. The Leno doesn't like it, but even he cannot stop it entirely. And sometimes, even in the arms of a client, there is a strange flicker of humanity. A man who speaks softly, who looks at you as if you are more than a body. A man who tells you a story from his childhood, or asks about your day as if he truly wants to know. It is dangerous to feel anything in those moments, but you cannot always help it. The biggest escape is always the dream of leaving. You dream of saving enough coins to buy your way out, to rent a small room with a window and a door that no one can open without knocking. You imagine a life selling herbs or perfumes, or maybe a stall in the market where you can talk to people without it costing you anything. Some dream of love. Of a man who keeps his promises, who takes you away and gives you a different name, a different life. You know how rare that is. You know how dangerous it is to hope for it. But still, the thought lingers on quiet nights when you cannot sleep. Others dream of leaving the city entirely. To a quiet village, to a town by the sea, to somewhere the walls don't echo with judgment. You've heard of women who disappeared, never seen again. Maybe they found that place. Or maybe the city simply swallowed them whole. The truth is you may never leave. You know this. But dreaming is still its own form of survival. Because even in the darkest corner of Rome, the human spirit looks for a way out. Through laughter, through music, through small rebellions, through the fragile hope that maybe tomorrow will be different. For now, these fleeting escapes are enough. They keep you breathing. They remind you that you are not just what the city calls you. You are still you, hidden beneath the layers of work and judgment and fear. And as long as you can still dream, even quietly, even secretly, you are not fully lost. Rome is not a safe city for anyone, but it is especially dangerous for women like you. The dangers are not only in the sickness that lingers in the air or the judgment that hangs over you. They are in the men who cross your path, the streets you must walk, and even the walls that surround you. Violence is always close. It waits in the corner of the tavern, in the hands of drunk soldiers, in the impatience of men who think coins give them the right to anything. You have seen it happen. A client who refused to pay lashes out, leaving a bruise that takes days to fade. A sailor too drunk to know his own strength pushes a woman against the wall until her screams turn to silence. Sometimes the brothel keeper steps in, dragging the man out into the street. Other times he looks the other way, especially if the client is important. Power always outweighs your safety. The streets outside are no better. Working under the open sky means risking more than hunger. Thieves roam the alleys, waiting for a moment to steal your day's earnings. Street guards patrol, but they are not there to protect you. More than once, you've heard of women taken by the vigilas themselves, forced to pay with their bodies instead of coins. Even the other women can become threats when desperation grows. You have seen friendships turn bitter over a single client. You have seen rivals slip harmful powders into perfumes, whispering curses disguised as compliments. In a place where survival is scarce, trust can be dangerous. There is betrayal in small ways too. A client who pretends to care only to rob you. A man who promises to return with coins but disappears into the crowd. A soldier who swears protection but sells your name to someone with a grudge. Some women carry knives hidden under their togas, small enough to keep secret but sharp enough to warn off a hand that lingers too long. Others rely on speed, learning how to slip out of a man's reach and vanish into the crowd. You have thought about these things more than you care to admit. What would you do if a man refused to let go? How far would you go to protect yourself? In the quiet of the night, you imagine yourself standing over a client who crossed a line, imagining the strength it would take to fight back. But in reality, most of the time you endure. Because fighting means risk. And risk means more danger. There are darker stories whispered in the brothel. Women who went with a client and never came back. A body found in the Tiber, stripped of everything but shame. A rival who disappeared after insulting the wrong man. No one talks about these things loudly, but everyone knows. And yet, even in this shadowed world, you learn ways to survive. You memorize faces. You remember which clients are gentle and which ones have quick tempers. You keep a mental map of the safest routes home, the taverns where the bouncers will help, the corners where the guards are too lazy to bother. You learn to read the smallest signs, tightened hands, shifting eyes, a certain slur in a man's speech that means it's time to leave. The older women teach you quiet strategies. Never let a man know if you're alone. Always keep the curtain tied loosely, never fully closed. If a client seems too calm, too quiet, stay closer to the door. Always take payment before. Always. And when danger comes anyway, you pray it passes quickly. There are moments when you lie awake thinking of how fragile it all is. How one wrong client, one wrong night could end everything. But you cannot live in fear all the time. You push the thought aside. You smile again the next day. You work. You survive. Because in Rome, survival is its own defiance. Even in the shadows you endure. Rome is harsh, but even in its hardest corners, there are moments when humanity shows itself. They are rare, fleeting, and sometimes so small you almost doubt they happened. But they matter. Sometimes kindness comes from other women in the trade. A shared piece of bread on a night when you hadn't eaten. A quick warning about a dangerous client before he reaches your door. A touch on the shoulder when your eyes are too tired to hide the fear. No one says much in those moments. The silence itself feels like comfort. Other times it comes from strangers. You remember once, in the marketplace, an old woman selling herbs slipped an extra handful of yarrow into your basket without charging. She didn't look at you with pity or judgment. She just nodded and moved on as if she knew you needed it more than you could admit. There was also a bathhouse attendant, a young boy who offered you clean water first before the others, whispering, "You've had a hard day." He had nothing to gain from it, but the gesture stayed with you long after. And then there are clients. Surprisingly, sometimes even they show glimpses of decency. One man, a craftsman from the Subura district, came to you more than once. He didn't talk much, but he always left the coins neatly stacked and never tried to bargain. One day he brought you a small wooden figurine he'd carved himself. "For luck," he said simply. He never returned after that, but the little figure sits in the corner of your room, a reminder that not all men are cruel. Another time, after a long night, a soldier you barely knew handed you an extra coin. "For food," he muttered, looking almost embarrassed. He left before you could answer. Even the city itself, in small ways, can feel kind. The breeze that moves through the forum on a hot afternoon. The brief quiet of the baths when you're the only one there. The way the light glows gold on the temples at sunset, making everything look softer, almost forgiving. You also find kindness in animals. A stray cat visits the brothel courtyard sometimes, slipping between the stones, brushing against your legs. It doesn't judge or expect. It just sits with you while you rest. These moments don't change your life. They don't erase the weight of survival or the cruelty of the city. But they are enough to remind you that you are not completely invisible. That even in a place as unfeeling as Rome, there are still sparks of connection, small and fragile but real. And sometimes those sparks keep you from breaking. You hold on to them quietly, like tiny treasures no one can steal. A piece of bread. A wooden figurine. A kind word spoken without expectation. They don't last long, but they are proof that there is still something in the world beyond coins and judgment. Something that whispers you are still human. And in a city that constantly tries to make you forget that, these moments are more valuable than gold. Years pass quietly in Rome. Days blur together, each one much like the last. But time always leaves its mark. When you first began, you thought only of the present, of surviving the day, of making enough to pay the brothel keeper, the tax collector, and still have a little left for yourself. But after years in this life, you begin to feel the weight of it settling into your bones. The nights grow longer. The coins feel heavier yet never enough. Your skin shows the signs of exhaustion no matter how much rouge you apply. The laughter that once came easily now feels like something you have to force. You see the same changes in the women around you. Some have grown harder, their eyes sharp and calculating, their smiles thin as paper. Others have grown quieter, fading into the background as their youth fades. A few disappear entirely, leaving behind only whispers, gone to another city, another brothel, another fate. For those who survive long enough, choices begin to narrow. Some women save coin by coin for years. They dream of buying their freedom if they are enslaved, or renting a small room far from the brothel. A few succeed. They open a modest shop selling perfumes or oils. They work as attendants at bathhouses or take in laundry. Their lives remain simple, but at least they are no longer bound to this trade. Others become madams, running the same kind of places that once owned their lives. They stop working themselves but control the work of younger women. They take a cut of every coin and in return offer protection. Thin protection but better than nothing. These women are both feared and respected. They know the streets too well to ever be naive again. Some turn to fortune-telling, mixing herbs for love charms or reading omens in wine cups. Rome has no shortage of people seeking answers, and even the smallest touch of mystery can be sold. But many have no plan, no savings, no escape. They simply keep working until they can no longer. Then they move to cheaper rooms, beg outside temples, or clean the same taverns they once worked in. And eventually the city forgets them. You think of the rare stories you've heard, of women who left this life entirely, taken away by a client who actually kept his promises, or who managed to find a small place in another town. You know those stories are exceptions. Rome does not often give happy endings to women like you. The longer you stay, the more you realize that this life is not built to last. It burns through youth and hope quickly, leaving only what is necessary to keep moving. And yet, despite everything, you endure. Because endurance is the only thing you have left. Sometimes you wonder what will happen to you when you cannot work anymore. Will you end up like the older women who sit by the temple steps, begging for coins from the same men who once paid them? Or will you find some small way to escape before that day comes? The dreams you once had grow quieter over time. You no longer picture grand escapes or love stories. Now your dreams are simpler: a warm room, a full belly, a place where no one knocks on the door without asking. You hold on to these small hopes because they are all that remain. And though the shadow of time grows long, you keep walking beneath it. Because as long as you move, as long as you breathe, you are still here. And in a city that forgets so easily, still being here is its own kind of victory. When you think of Rome, you know it will outlast you. The stones, the temples, the arches, they will remain long after your footsteps have vanished. And yet, even in this eternal city, lives like yours leave faint marks, too quiet for most to notice. You will not have a marble statue. No poet will immortalize your name in verses meant for noble halls. You will not rest in a tomb with an inscription declaring your virtues. The city does not remember women like you with honor. It barely remembers you at all. But you are there, hidden in the cracks of its history. Your name is scratched into a wall of the Lupanar, where someone carved a crude message. Maritima was here and worth every coin. It is not much, but it is something, a proof that you existed. You are in the graffiti on the walls of Pompeii, where clients wrote about the women they saw, praising or mocking them. You are in the cursed tablets buried beneath temples, where rivals and lovers whispered their anger to the gods. You are in the city's ledgers in the taxes collected from your work. Your presence lingers in the stories people tell, in the quiet ways the city depends on you but never admits it. You are part of the rhythm of Rome, part of the unspoken machinery that keeps its streets alive. And though society tries to erase you, you have left your mark, not in the ways they celebrate but in the ways they cannot deny. When you lie awake at night, you sometimes wonder what it will all mean in the end. Will anyone remember your face? Will anyone know the sound of your laughter, the shape of your dreams? Or will you become just another nameless woman swallowed by the city? But maybe the truth is this: you were more than what they called you. More than a profession. More than the judgment. You were a person who endured in a world that gave you little choice. And endurance itself is a kind of legacy. Because without women like you, the story of Rome is incomplete. Behind every senator, every soldier, every merchant, there is someone who came to you in the dark. Behind the marble and gold, there is the quiet labor of lives like yours, unseen, uncelebrated but real. History will try to forget you, but it will fail completely. You will remain in the walls, in the whispers, in the faint ink of forgotten records. You existed. And even if the city doesn't care, that truth matters. When the sun rises tomorrow, you will rise with it. You will walk the same streets, pass the same temples, and see the same faces. But somewhere deep inside, you will know that surviving is its own rebellion, its own small defiance against a world that tried to define you. And in the end, that defiance is what makes you unforgettable.